Can you think of two groups of people that are really, really hostile towards each other? Hi, I'm Karen Wingate from www.graceonparade.com, and we're into our next session of our Ephesians Bible study. This week we'll be looking at Ephesians 2, verses 11 through 20. Now, probably the first group that's come to your mind is the Republicans and Democrats, for all the spatting that they've been doing recently. Believe me, compared to other examples in history, they're a temporary catfight. I'm thinking of clashes like the Bosnians and Serbs in the 1990s, the clash between Catholics and Protestants in Ireland, and the Muslims who are against anyone who's not Muslim. In 1994, there was an intense clash of hostility that rocked the world. The Hutu presidents of Rwanda and Burundi were assassinated. The Hutu majority of those two countries decided to retaliate against the more wealthy Tutsi clan. Now, what made this clash interesting was, unlike other clashes, it wasn't based on politics or religion. It was more on class warfare, simple class warfare. But it reached such a height that within 100 days, almost 1 million people lay dead and the world lay stunned. How could such genocide happen from such hatred and hostility? Now, maybe there wasn't as much violence, but one that was long-standing and intense was the Jews' hatred of the Gentiles. And I can imagine the Gentiles weren't very favorably oriented towards the Jews either. In the Jews' mind, they couldn't even eat with a Gentile, they couldn't go in their house, and their God was for them alone. The Gentiles to have access to God's plan? It was an exclusive right of just Israel. They seem to have a misunderstanding of God's overall plan that God expressed in the Old Testament, that his plan to save the world was for those who were near, the Jews, and those who were far off, the Gentiles. And God's plan was to reconcile all people to himself through Jesus Christ. And that's what those first verses are talking about in our passage today. You know, the neat thing is that as the Jews reconciled to God, and as the Gentiles reconciled to God, guess what's happening? They're going to become reconciled to each other. And that was God's plan. In verse 14, it says, "For he himself, Jesus, is our peace, who has made the two groups one and has destroyed the barrier, the dividing wall of hostility." Wow, doesn't that just sound awesome? Wouldn't that be nice if that could happen? Is it possible? For the Rwandans, it was. It took a while, but about 10 years later, the Rwandan president called in Rick Warren, who came in, and there was a major revival in the country. The government set up programs to start getting people to start working together. I just read online that every citizen of Rwanda is required to do 3 hours of community service each month, so that they will learn to work together again and to build those relationships. It's happened for Rwanda, and it can happen for us too. Well, maybe there's someone that you don't feel reconciled to, that there's this barrier of hostility, and boy, it would be nice if you could get rid of that barrier. How can it happen? Number one, you have to look at your relationship with God. Are you reconciled to God? That's first and foremost. Are you drawing closer to him? Are you continuing to rebel against him? Or are you learning to follow in his ways? Shape up your relationship with God first. Second, you be the first to extend grace and forgiveness. As Christ has forgiven you, so you need to forgive others. I remember a quote from Philip Yancey, who used to be editor of the Christianity Today magazine, and I tried to find the exact quote. I couldn't find it. I'll do the best I can. But he said something like this regarding the Bosnian Serb warfare in the 1990s. If one side would decide to forgive, it would all be over. That's what it takes, is one side to say, the buck stops here. We're not going to have any more hostility. I choose to forgive. Now, is this 100% foolproof? No. You do the best you can and leave the rest to God. There's a verse in Romans 12:18 that says that inasmuch as it depends on you, be at peace with all men. You do what you can do to be at peace with God and to be at peace with others. The rest is up to them and their relationship with God. I'm praying for you today that if there is a relationship that you have where there's that barrier of hostility, that God will break the barriers down and bring you and your potential friend peace. In a day or so, I'll be putting up the study guide for this passage, Ephesians 2:11-20, and I hope that you will continue to study the Word of God with me at www.graceonparade.com. Have a great day.